First things first, if you're going to a castle, don't bring melee. Play literally anything else. If you're going to a pure territory fight, probably don't bring melee unless you're going to be full pushing the territory. If you're in a bigger alliance, you'll probably fight open world even if it is for a territory, simply because you're too big for the territory, so don't worry about that too much. Okay, so what is the point of melee DPS? Ranged DPS are generally safer since you're ranged, and we know they do solid damage. And they're always useful, whereas melee has situations where you simply aren't useful, like castles or choke points. Obviously, for some people, it's just a lot of fun. Running into the enemy, swinging your axe about like a madman, that's a perfectly acceptable reason for wanting to play something. But when we're trying to win, we need something a little more concrete. One of the things that melee weapons has is resilience penetration. This is a stat that allows you to cut through the focus fire protection on enemies. Generally, this just means you do more damage to tanks than your cloth fellows, since they're usually the ones that get a lot of focus fire protection. Generally, this isn't a terribly big deal, but it is nice to have and something worth thinking about. Second thing is that a couple of the melee weapons work as clap builds. Previously, that would have been the Galantine Bear, but currently it's all about the Bridled Fury. Bridled Fury does butt tons of damage that you can stack super easily, and with throwing knives, you essentially hit the damage cap without even having a beamer. You get the added benefit of iframing any reflected damage, so you don't even have to worry about demon armor. Top it all off with what, 70 or 80% resilience penetration, and you end up clapping even the tanks. My point being is that sometimes a weapon is just so good that even if it has disadvantages, it does so much damage that it doesn't matter. So the real sort of purpose of melee DPS, I guess in my opinion, is through sustained pressure. So this will depend on how your Zerg plays and who you're fighting, and is harder now that Hellion Jacket is not God mode anymore. But as a melee, you can run with your Zerg during your engage, but instead of going for the main clump, you can go past it to the enemy backline. You can also slip around the side if the enemy engages first, and the backline will deliver themselves to you. This is a good position for a couple reasons. 1, you're surrounded by clothies. 2, they probably won't have any focus fire protection. 3, anyone that survives the main clump of your engage is going to try and run past you for you to finish them off. 4, you're away from your teammates, so you're not likely to get caught up in an engage. If both sides continue to engage on cooldown, going back and forth, you can potentially stay back there eventually, because the enemy backline isn't going to have the time to kind of stay still and focus you down. If your Zergs do break away from each other, just use your defensives, get out of there, and sneak back in when you can. Generally, you'll want to get a sense of what's happening before they start killing you, since at that point it's probably too late. Okay, so if I've explained anything properly, you should probably be thinking, but Railhaz, one guy doesn't do enough damage to actually kill people. Won't it just get healed? And yes, you're right. Ideally, there would at least be a couple of you, and if you're all, sort of high IP, you can actually kill people if they naturally clump for you. Or you get an errant Camlin that goes a little too far. But even if you don't kill someone, you have the advantage of not wearing cloth, which means you don't have to back off right away. Another thing that I've said is damage over time can be fine if it's fast and hard hitting, but is generally less desirable than instant damage. That isn't quite so important when you're tanky enough that you can actually stay on someone and follow them around for a little bit. Since your E is AoE, you might even be able to scare off several people at once, because they're going to have to run, either kill you or run away from you. Otherwise, you will kill them. The point being that if you can cause healer or healers to run away from you or heal themselves instead of healing their friends, then you're still being useful, even if it's hard to tell. And that differs from my point earlier of a single person, a single ranged DPS running in, throwing their Q and W as if they're useful, because they're going to have to immediately run away because they'll die just to ambient damage because they're wearing cloth. So Obviously, it takes a little bit to kind of figure out the flow of combat, but it's quite a bit of fun if you can stay alive. Keep in mind that just because you're a little tankier doesn't mean you'll survive a full enemy engage. Get out of the way. Try and be in their backline where they're going to be running past you instead of onto you. And if all you're doing is damage, then we might as well encourage using the highest damage weapon that you can. In most cases, that's going to be our DPS. Obviously, you play what you have spec in and what you find fun, but keep in mind how you can offer value to the team.